Leonardo da Vinci remains one of the most remarkable individuals ever born. His name has become a symbol of genius, creativity, and an endless hunger for knowledge. Even centuries after his death, he stands as the ultimate example of what the human mind can achieve when curiosity is allowed to roam freely. He was not only a painter, but also an inventor, anatomist, engineer, scientist, philosopher, musician, and observer of nature. Leonardo did not believe in limits imposed by profession, tradition, or convention. For him, curiosity was not a hobby, it was a way of life. Born on April 15, 1452, in the small village of Vinci in Tuscany, Leonardo entered a world that was slowly awakening from the darkness of the Middle Ages. The Renaissance was beginning to reshape Europe, encouraging a renewed interest in classical knowledge, human potential, and scientific observation. Leonardo did not merely participate in this cultural rebirth, he became its greatest embodiment. His life demonstrated that the boundaries between art and science are artificial, and that true understanding comes from seeing the world as a connected whole. Leonardo was born out of wedlock to Ser Piero da Vinci, a respected notary, and Caterina, a woman of humble origins. Because of his illegitimate status, Leonardo was excluded from formal education in Latin and Greek, the languages of scholars and intellectuals of the time. While this might have limited another child, it shaped Leonardo into something unique. Without rigid academic training, he learned directly from experience. He observed nature, asked questions, and trusted his senses more than ancient texts. He later described himself as a disciple of experience, a phrase that perfectly captures his approach to learning. As a child, Leonardo showed an unusual fascination with the natural world. He studied insects, birds, flowing water, rocks, plants, and clouds. He watched how animals moved and how light changed throughout the day. These observations were not idle curiosity, they were careful studies. He wanted to understand why things were the way they were. Even at a young age, Leonardo showed a rare ability to combine imagination with careful observation. His father recognized Leonardo's talent and, around the age of 14, apprenticed him to Andrea del Verrocchio in Florence. Verrocchio was one of the most respected artists of the time, and his workshop was a place where art, science, and craftsmanship met. Apprentices learned not only painting, but also sculpture, metalworking, engineering, and design. For Leonardo, this environment was perfect. He absorbed knowledge eagerly, mastering techniques while constantly experimenting upon them and improving on them. In Verrocchio's workshop, Leonardo learned the foundations of drawing and painting, including anatomy, perspective, and the use of light and shadow. He studied geometry to understand proportion and balance. He experimented with pigments and materials, seeking more durable and realistic effects. According to a famous story, Leonardo painted an angel in Verrocchio's The Baptism of Christ with such beauty that his master was overwhelmed. Whether or not the story is entirely true, it reflects how early Leonardo's exceptional talent became apparent. Leonardo's art was different from that of his contemporaries because it was driven by deep curiosity about human nature. He did not want merely to copy appearances. He wanted to understand emotions, thoughts, and inner life. He believed that the face was a mirror of the soul and that every emotion left traces on the muscles and posture of the body. He spent countless hours observing people in markets, streets, and gatherings, sketching expressions of joy, anger, sorrow, and fear. This intense observation allowed Leonardo to create figures that feel alive. His paintings seemed to breathe, think, and feel. Unlike many artists of his time who relied on traditional formulas, Leonardo sought realism grounded in science. He studied optics to understand how the eye perceives depth and distance. He analyzed how light reflects off surfaces and how shadows shape form. These studies led him to develop techniques that revolutionized painting. One of his most famous techniques was sfumato, which involves blending colors and tones so smoothly that edges appear soft and natural. This technique allowed Leonardo to create subtle transitions between light and shadow, giving his paintings an unprecedented sense of realism. The Mona Lisa is the most famous example of this approach. Her enigmatic smile, which seems to change depending on how one looks at it, is the result of Leonardo's understanding of human perception and visual psychology. The Mona Lisa is not merely a portrait, it is a study of mystery, emotion, and human complexity. Leonardo worked on the painting for years, refining it endlessly. He carried it with him until the end of his life, never fully satisfied. This reveals an important aspect of Leonardo's character, his relentless pursuit of perfection. For him, curiosity was not inseparable from dissatisfaction. He was always searching for improvement.
Leonardo's curiosity did not stop at art. He believed that to paint the human body accurately, one must understand it completely. This belief led him to study anatomy with extraordinary dedication. At a time when dissection was controversial and often forbidden, Leonardo obtained permission to dissect human corpses in hospitals. He worked at night, enduring unpleasant conditions and social risk, driven by the desire to understand how the body works. His anatomical drawings are among the most detailed and accurate ever produced. He studied bones, muscles, tendons, organs, and blood vessels with scientific precision. He drew the human skeleton as a mechanical structure, analyzing how joints allow movement and how muscles generate force. He examined the heart and correctly described its function as a pump. He studied the brain, the nervous system, and the development of the fetus in the womb. Leonardo did not see anatomy as a collection of isolated facts. He approached it as an integrated system where every part influenced the whole. He compared human anatomy with that of animals, searching for universal principles of life. His curiosity pushed him beyond what was required for art, leading him into the realm of pure science. Although his anatomy studies were not published during his lifetime, they anticipated discoveries that would not be confirmed until centuries later. Nature was Leonardo's greatest source of inspiration. He believed that nature operated according to mathematical laws and that beauty emerged from harmony and proportion. He studied plants and noticed patterns in the way leaves grow and branches divide. He observed that these patterns often followed mathematical relationships, revealing an underlying order in the natural world. Leonardo was particularly fascinated by water. He described it as the vehicle of nature, recognizing its power to shape landscapes and sustain life. He studied rivers, waterfalls, waves, and whirlpools with intense interest. His sketches of flowing water capture motion and energy in a way that feels almost modern. He also applied this knowledge practically, designing canals, irrigation systems, and flood control projects. His interest in engineering grew from the same curiosity that drove his art and science. Leonardo designed machines for lifting heavy objects, digging canals, and constructing buildings. He worked as a military engineer for powerful rulers, creating designs for fortifications, weapons, and defensive systems. His notebooks are filled with sketches of bridges, cranes, and mechanical devices that demonstrate a deep understanding of physics and mechanics. One of Leonardo's most famous obsessions was flight. He was captivated by birds and spent years studying their wings, movements, and anatomy. He believed that by understanding how birds fly, humans would one day take to the skies. He designed gliders, flying machines, and a helicopter-like device centuries before powered flight became possible. Although his designs could not be realized with the materials of his time, they reveal a visionary mind far ahead of its era. Leonardo's notebooks are perhaps his greatest legacy. thousands of pages survive, filled with drawings, observations, questions, and ideas on an astonishing range of subjects. He wrote in mirror script, from right to left, possibly to keep his ideas private or simply because it felt natural to him as a left-handed person. These notebooks show a mind that never rested. He asked questions constantly. Why is the sky blue? How does the moon reflect light? Why are fossils found on mountaintops? How does sound travel? How does memory work? Leonardo did not accept traditional explanations without evidence. He sought answers through observation and experimentation. In this sense, he anticipated the scientific method long before it was formally defined. Leonardo refused to separate art and science. For him, they were two sides of the same pursuit, understanding reality. He believed that art without science was empty and science without art was blind. This integration allowed him to see connections others missed. His curiosity moved freely across disciplines, creating insights that no single field could produce alone. Despite his brilliance, Leonardo was not without flaws. His curiosity sometimes overwhelmed his ability to finish projects. He began many works with enthusiasm, but left them incomplete as new interests captured his attention. Patrons were sometimes frustrated by his delays. Yet this restlessness was also the source of his genius. He was driven not by deadlines, but by questions. Leonardo traveled extensively throughout Italy, working in Florence, Milan, Rome, and eventually France. In Milan, he served Duke Ludovico Sforza as an artist, engineer, and inventor. He designed stage sets for court festivities, planned architectural projects, and worked on military innovations. His versatility made him indispensable to powerful patrons. During his time in Milan, Leonardo painted The Last Supper, one of the most influential artworks in history. Instead of depicting a static religious scene, he captured a dramatic psychological moment, the instant Jesus announces that one of his disciples will betray him. Each figure reacts differently, revealing shock, anger, confusion, or sorrow. This painting reflects Leonardo's deep understanding of human emotion and group dynamics. Leonardo experimented with new painting techniques while working on The Last Supper, which unfortunately caused the work to deteriorate over time. This failure illustrates an important aspect of his character. He was willing to risk imperfection in pursuit of innovation. His curiosity pushed him beyond safe methods, sometimes with costly results. As Leonardo grew older, his pace of artistic production slowed, but his curiosity never faded. He continued to study nature, science, and philosophy. In his later years, he accepted an invitation from King Francis I of France, who admired him deeply. Leonardo spent his final years in France, honored and respected, reflecting on a lifetime of exploration. Even in old age, Leonardo remained a student of the world. He organized his notes, refined his ideas, and shared his knowledge with others. When he died in 1519, he left behind a legacy unlike any other. Many of his ideas were not fully understood or appreciated until centuries later, yet their brilliance endures. Leonardo da Vinci's life teaches us that curiosity is the engine of human progress. His example shows that asking questions is more important than having answers, and that true learning comes from observation, experimentation, and imagination. He reminds us that knowledge is interconnected and that creativity thrives when we refuse to accept artificial boundaries. Leonardo was not simply a genius, he was a model of what it means to be fully human. His curiosity without limits continues to inspire artists, scientists, engineers, and thinkers around the world. In exploring his life, we are reminded of the infinite potential of the curious mind.
Leonardo da Vinci's later life reflects not a slowing of the mind, but a deepening of thought. As years passed, his curiosity became more reflective, more philosophical, yet no less intense. He began to see his studies not as isolated pursuits, but as pieces of a single vast puzzle. Every movement of water, every muscle in the body, every shift of light across a surface seemed connected by hidden laws waiting to be understood. Leonardo believed that understanding these laws was the highest purpose of human intellect. During his years in Milan, Leonardo expanded his role far beyond that of a painter. He presented himself to Duke Ludovico Sforza not primarily as an artist, but as a military engineer and problem solver. In a famous letter, Leonardo listed his abilities in designing bridges, fortifications, weapons, and hydraulic systems before mentioning painting almost as an afterthought. This reveals how he viewed himself, not limited to one identity, but capable of adapting his knowledge to any challenge. As a military engineer, Leonardo designed innovative defensive structures, including angled walls to deflect cannon fire and complex systems of moats and drawbridges. He studied the physics of impact and force, applying mathematical reasoning to warfare. Yet, despite his work in military design, Leonardo personally disliked violence. His notebooks often reveal a sense of moral unease about weapons, suggesting that his curiosity was driven by intellectual challenge rather than a desire for disruption. Leonardo's fascination with mechanics led him to study gears, pulleys, levers, and springs in great detail. He believed that machines were extensions of natural laws, not violations of them. By understanding how force moved through mechanical systems, he believed humans could harness nature more effectively. His sketches show intricate designs for clocks, automated devices, and machines powered by water or wind. Some of these ideas would not be realized until the Industrial Revolution. One of Leonardo's most remarkable qualities was his ability to learn directly from failure. He treated mistakes as experiments rather than defeats. When a design did not work, he analyzed why, adjusted his understanding, and tried again. This mindset, which is now central to scientific thinking, was rare in his time. Leonardo's curiosity made him resilient, allowing him to persist where others might have given up. Leonardo's notebooks also reveal a deep interest in geology and the history of the Earth. He studied fossils found in mountains and questioned the common belief that they were placed there by biblical floods. Instead, he proposed that these fossils were once living organisms and that the Earth had changed gradually over vast periods of time. This idea challenged dominant religious explanations and showed Leonardo's willingness to follow evidence wherever it led. He also studied astronomy, though he was cautious in this area. Leonardo observed the moon carefully, noticing that it reflects sunlight and that its surface affects how light is scattered. He correctly explained the faint glow seen on the dark side of the crescent moon as sunlight reflected from Earth, a phenomenon now known as earthshine. This insight demonstrates his ability to connect observation with reasoning. Leonardo's optics was central to both his science and his art. He studied how light travels in straight lines, how it reflects and refracts, and how the human eye perceives depth and color. He understood that distant objects appear less distinct and more bluish due to the atmosphere, a phenomenon known as aerial perspective. He used this knowledge to create realistic landscapes that seemed to extend far beyond the canvas.
In portrait painting, Leonardo's curiosity focused intensely on individuality. He believed that every human face carried a unique story shaped by experience, emotion, and character. He once wrote that a good painter should study people constantly, memorizing expressions and gestures. This practice allowed him to create portraits that feel psychologically complex rather than merely decorative. Leonardo's deep interest in the mind extended beyond facial expression. He explored memory, imagination, and perception, attempting to understand how thoughts form and how ideas connect. While psychology as a formal discipline did not exist in his time, Leonardo's reflections show a sophisticated awareness of mental processes. He believed that imagination played a crucial role in creativity, allowing the mind to combine observations into new forms. Music also played a role in Leonardo's life. He was an accomplished musician who designed new musical instruments and believed that sound followed mathematical laws similar to those governing light and motion. For Leonardo, music, like painting, was a way of expressing harmony and proportion. His interest in sound reflects his belief that beauty arises from order. Leonardo's relationships with others were complex. He valued companionship and intellectual exchange, but often preferred solitude for deep thinking. He mentored younger artists and shared his knowledge generously, yet he remained somewhat distant and enigmatic. His curiosity was inward as well as outward, leading him to reflect on human nature and morality. Throughout his life, Leonardo struggled with the tension between ambition and contemplation. He wanted to complete great works, yet he was equally drawn to endless exploration. This tension sometimes led to frustration, both for him and for those who depended on his work. However, it was also the source of his originality. Leonardo was not content to repeat what was already known. He wanted to push beyond it. When Leonardo returned to Florence after years in Milan, he found a city filled with new artistic rivals, including Michelangelo and Raphael. Rather than competing directly, Leonardo continued to follow his own path. His curiosity kept him focused on discovery rather than comparison. He was more interested in understanding nature than in achieving fame. During this period, Leonardo worked on several ambitious projects, including large-scale paintings and engineering schemes. Some were left unfinished, yet even incomplete works reveal extraordinary insight. His drawings from this time show increasing sophistication, suggesting that his understanding continued to evolve even when external success was uncertain. Leonardo's later move to France marked a turning point in his life. Invited by King Francis I, he was given the title of first painter, engineer, and architect to the king. In France, Leonardo enjoyed financial security and respect, freeing him from the pressures of commissions. This allowed him to focus on reflection, teaching, and organizing his vast body of notes. In his final years, Leonardo looked back on his life with a sense of both accomplishment and unfinished potential. He was aware that many of his ideas would remain unrealized, yet he seemed to accept this with calm understanding. His curiosity had been its own reward. He once wrote that as a well-spent day brings happy sleep, so a well-used life brings happy death. Leonardo died on May 2, 1519, at the age of 67. According to legend, he passed away in the arms of King Francis I, a symbolic image of a genius honored by royalty. Whether or not this scene is historically accurate, it reflects the respect Leonardo commanded at the end of his life. After his death, Leonardo's notebooks were scattered and remained largely unpublished for centuries. As a result, much of his scientific work had little immediate impact. Yet when scholars eventually rediscovered his writings, they were astonished by their depth and accuracy. Leonardo had anticipated principles of anatomy, geology, hydrodynamics, and mechanics long before they became widely accepted. Leonardo da Vinci's true legacy lies not in any single invention or artwork, but in his approach to knowledge. He demonstrated that curiosity is most powerful when it crosses boundaries. By uniting art and science, observation and imagination, he created a model of learning that remains relevant today. His life challenges the modern tendency towards specialization. Leonardo reminds us that creativity often emerges from connecting ideas across disciplines. He shows that the human mind is capable of extraordinary insight when it is allowed to explore freely and deeply. Leonardo's curiosity was driven by wonder rather than certainty. He was comfortable with questions that had no immediate answers. This openness allowed him to continue learning throughout his life. In a world that often values quick conclusions, Leonardo's patience and humility stand as powerful lessons. Even today, Leonardo continues to inspire innovation. Engineers study his designs, artists learn from his techniques, and scientists admire his observational skills. His notebooks are still examined for insights, proving that true curiosity never becomes outdated. Leonardo da Vinci was not perfect, but he was profoundly human. His doubts, struggles, and unfinished works remind us that genius is not about flawlessness, but about persistence and passion. His curiosity without limits transformed not only his own life, but the course of human thought. In understanding Leonardo, we understand something essential about ourselves. We are creatures driven by curiosity, capable of wonder and discovery. Leonardo shows us what happens when that curiosity is allowed to flourish without fear or restraint.